Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is The Wild Chase, the only YouTube channel where you can get all of your up-to-date weekly news, stories, and current events about hunting and fishing. We got a couple good ones lined up for you this week, so we hope you enjoy. If you do, please just leave us a comment down in the comment section and go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into the first story of the week, which is actually about fishing for once. So the first story this week comes out of New Hampshire for a new state record lake trout caught at 37 pounds. It actually crushed the previous record by at least 9 pounds, and the previous record was set in 1958, if that tells you how long ago that record's been held. And again, absolutely crushed it. 9 pounds, that usually doesn't happen. Usually when you break state records, it's by maybe like a pound or two. Honestly, usually a couple of ounces, but this one, like I said, absolutely crushed it. Dude caught it this last Tuesday while he was out ice fishing, and they actually had to go to 2 different scales and call the local state game wardens to come and check it because they couldn't find a scale that measured big enough for its fish. The angler who actually caught the fish is named Thomas Knight, and he was in Meredith, New Hampshire when he caught this fish. What's cool about it is that he's going to be getting the fish obviously done in taxidermy, but it's going to be on display at his buddy's restaurant for the next 2 years. Now, just for size, I'm going to go ahead and throw up a picture of an average of what people can consider a large lake trout, and you guys can just see from the difference in the 2 pictures just how much of an absolute pig this fish is that this guy caught. We're going to keep trying to find news stories like this in the future. If you find any stories that you think should be shown on this channel, go ahead and leave those down in the comments, and we'll go ahead and move on to the next story. Alright, so the next story this week is actually a big point of contention for a lot of folks. It involves wolves, which, just to give you a quick backstory on why there's so much contention on it, a few years ago, Yellowstone National Park decided they were going to release some wolves to control the elk population on Yellowstone, and a huge story, documentary was published that showed that it had changed the courses of rivers and caused all the trees to start growing back, and the beavers were coming back, and so it was touted as this really big success story. And every state after that started saying, well, we need to bring wolves back. They're endangered. They're great for the environment. They control the elk population, so we need to bring them back. You can go ahead and draw your own conclusions about that evidence. But a lot of states have already gone ahead and started reintroducing wolves. But in some states have actually started declaring them an invasive species, or at least a nuisance species, and have started having to allow hunting on them just to control the population. The reason why this is important to this week's second news story is that Utah just signed a bill that actually would prohibit the introduction of wolves. The bill was actually sponsored by two representatives, Wild and Croden, and it was voted on 54-13, so it looks like there will not be a wolf population being introduced anytime soon into Utah. They basically voiced concerns that, again, they didn't want to have to control an invasive species, and there's also, according to the news story, little evidence that wolves were ever present in Utah. This is actually a bigger deal overall for some conservationists who are pro-wolf, because Utah is kind of the gap that bridges Mexico to the northern populations through Colorado, all the way up to Canada, where these wolves are getting introduced. So a lot of pro-wolf introductionists are saying that Utah needs to be the gap, or needs to fill the gap in the wolf population so that there's a continuous line to help control these elk populations. I personally don't live in any of these areas where wolves have been introduced, but I've talked to a few people that live in these areas, and it seems like the consensus is that people just generally don't like them. They're killing a lot of livestock as well as wildlife. Some states like Montana are already having to pay out huge sums of money to these landowners and these ranchers, Wyoming as well, for grizzlies that are killing their livestock. And now these ranchers are having to deal with wolves being introduced. So a lot of people are very against it, and it's kind of a pseudo-science conservationists versus a bunch of angry farmers and ranchers and hunters. So it's actually really hard to find concrete evidence of one way or the other. I personally don't live in one of these areas, so I don't feel like I'm qualified to give you my opinion on this. But I do think that the people's interests should come first, and if that's how Utah feels about this, then it's good that they're standing at their ground and not letting themselves get bullied into doing something that they don't feel is conducive to their environment. So I'm happy for them. Now, this next story is for you deer hunters living in North Carolina. The North Carolina Wildlife and Resources Commission just voted that they were going to prohibit, starting August 1st, 2020, the sale of any natural cervid attractant. Now, just to clarify what this means, if you have a synthetic attractant, a synthetic doe estrus or buck urine, buck bomb, anything of that sort, as long as it's synthetic, you're still good to go. But if it's a natural product being sold in Cabela's or any other outdoor store, that is going to actually be illegal this next hunting season. They're saying that the reason that they are doing this is not because they think it's an unfair advantage or anything. It's actually that these products are usually made in states where chronic wasting disease is a problem, and they're worried that through these body excrements is essentially what they are. That's actually how CWD is spread. So they're doing this to protect the North Carolina deer population. When I first read it, the headline just said deer attractants outlawed, and I was kind of confused. But if you guys have heard this story running around, just to clarify with you, natural excrements are off limits. However, any synthetic product, which in my opinion works almost just as well, that's still a go. You can still use that in North Carolina. So just a quick update for you guys in North Carolina. If you've heard that, don't worry about it that much. Just double check on your products and make sure that you're hunting legally. For the last story, we have what was originally thought to be a world record whitetail. Ended up turning out to be the new Oklahoma state record whitetail. The whitetail was taken in Oklahoma by Gunnar Womack and was an 8x8 or a 16 point for you Southern boys. Originally reported as 213 inches. This was a while back. He was reported at 213 inches by their original measurements, but when Boone and Crockett actually did their official measurement, it came in at 188 and 5/8 net measurements, which makes it the new Oklahoma state record. Now, I'm not an expert when it comes to measuring deer antlers. I've never personally taken a deer even big enough to even worry about it, but supposedly he lost some of his length during the drying process. If you're not familiar with Boone and Crockett, for basically any antlered animal, you have to let the antlers or the taxidermy dry for a minimum of 60 days before the measurement is actually taken. So originally, when his dad measured it, it measured at 213, and you may have seen this story around that possible new world record whitetail taken. It ended up only scoring 188 and 5/8 inches net, but that's still pretty impressive. Absolutely huge deer, you can tell from the pictures, and this guy was only a teenager when he took it. I don't know if he was 18 or 16 or anything in between there, but pretty impressive nonetheless. All right, guys, that's pretty much going to wrap up the news this week. Again, if you enjoy everything, please go ahead and give us a subscribe. Put some comments down in the comments section. And before we take off, I'm going to go ahead and give you the upcoming draw deadlines. The major one is going to be for New Mexico, all species. That's due March 18th. Make sure you go ahead and get in on that one. New Mexico is a great state to hunt. That's where all three of us from Three Dudes Outdoors have actually gotten our rams. And the upcoming deadline is going to be for Utah, another great state to hunt, 19 March, and that's going to be for points only. So you already missed the major tag deadline, but you still have a chance to get some points in for future hunts for what your next application is. Again, our Facebook page is Three Dudes Outdoors. We also have an Instagram. Go ahead and check us out on that if you like everything that you've been seeing. And please continue watching us for more content. Hope you guys have a good week.